Legend of Grimrock 2 is the best RPG to date? Let's find out. The best RPGs transport you to another world, whether that's a nearby galaxy or a fictitious medieval land. You can spend hours exploring, fighting, and guiding your protagonist through these games. Getting lost in these magical and dense worlds, definitely my favorite genre of games. So we've brought together a list of the best RPG games to play in 2022, so let's just start the video, without further ado. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. So let's start the video by talking about none other than The Witcher 3 from the Witcher series. Many of the best RPGs focus on tales of lone, wandering adventurers, but few pull any of it off with such artistry as The Witcher 3. That artistry is most apparent in the setting itself, which is so packed with wonderful sunsets and wind-tossed graves of trees that months later we still find ourselves opting to go to destinations on foot rather than taking the fast travel points. But the true strength of The Witcher 3 is that it populates these memorable landscapes with NPCs doling out humble but memorable quests that help create one of the most human RPG experiences on the market. In decaying wayside towns, the Witcher, Geralt, might find penurious elves struggling in the face of local racism, and elsewhere he might help a self-styled baron reunite with his long-estranged daughter. These quests skillfully navigate moral issues without being heavy-handed or offering obvious solutions. Then through it all, as much in The Witcher 2, Geralt usually plays the role of just another character on this troubled world stage. In the process, this tale of monster slaying and interdimensional raiders becomes oddly and movingly relatable. The Witcher 3 is still great with a few years on it, but you can spice it up with some Witcher 3 mods if you're into that. Next up, Outward. Outward immediately disposes of the self-centered savior complex that we've been cozy with in many action RPGs. While other heroes dispense of bandit camps before lunch and save the world in time for dinner, Outward sits you down and reminds you that no, you can't just go out and slay wolves with no training. The type of fights that RPGs typically treat as tutorial fodder are genuine accomplishments in Outward. To make matters worse, or better in our opinion, Outward constantly autosaves your game. Your mistakes are permanent and death can't really be sidestepped by loading a recent save. In a cruel marriage between Dark Souls and Minecraft, you're likely to be knocked down a peg every time you die, often left retracing your steps to find lost gear and left missing progress so you'd so jealously hoarded. Yet another treat is Outward's magic system, which you're forced to irreversibly trade some of your total health points for magical aptitude. Spells are hard-won and costly investments that make casting even a simple fireball a luxury. Outward's split-screen co-op, even online, is another unorthodox twist that brings new challenges and new laughs to the concept of becoming a hero.
If the rest of the mechanics surrounding that solid core were better, Outward could have been a diamond in the rough. Meeting creatures is one thing, fighting them is another. Combat started out poor and barely improved after learning the ropes. The early hours feel poorly balanced because of large numbers of powerful enemies. The stingy stamina meter depletes to empty with any sustained defense longer than a few seconds and takes half a minute, if not an in-game night's sleep, to fully recover. Getting enough silver to buy good armor, finally getting a top-shelf weapon, and learning some good skills certainly helps, but doesn't fix the actual fighting.
Next up, Kingdom Come Deliverance. In this historical RPG set in the muddy fields of Bohemia in 1403, you play a peasant called Henry who gets swept up in a war for his homeland. It's a detailed RPG with its deep sword fighting system, hunger and thirst systems, crafting, and more than a dozen equipment slots to fill with meticulously modeled gear inspired by the raiments of the time. It's also surprisingly open-ended. If you want to wander into the woods and pick up mushrooms for meager coin, then off you go. Just be careful of bandits as you explore the pretty rural locales. It's by no means perfect, there are plenty of bugs and wonky moments, but this is an RPG in the Elder Scrolls vein. A few bugs can be excused when the wider experience is this atmospheric. And finally, The Legends of Grimrock 2. We love the original Legend of Grimrock and the way it embraced the old Dungeon Master model of making your party, mostly a collection of stats. Explore the world one square at a time. This one drawback is that it was too literal of a dungeon crawler. The enemies might change, but for the most part you kept tramping down what seemed like the same series of corridors until the game was over. The sequel, though, focuses on both the dank dungeons and the bright open world above, resulting in a nostalgic romp that's immensely enjoyable and filled with even deadlier enemies and more challenging puzzles. As with the first outing, much of its power springs from the element of surprise. One moment you'll be merrily hacking through enemies with ease, and the next, you'll discover that there are sometimes as many thrills in the flight as in the fight. All in all, making it a very lovely and scary experience. So this definitely marks our favorite RPG game on this list. Anyway, that wraps up the video for today, and let us know which RPG game is the most fun for you guys. Have you played any of them? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you next time on Nano 10s.